My name's Peter Phillips, and I have the honor to serve as the president of the Wagner Society of New York, and the additional pleasure and privilege of speaking with Jordan Shanahan, who many of us have seen at Bayreuth in the new production of Parsifal, playing Klingsor. And thank you very much for those performances, Jordan.
My pleasure.
They were just super, scary. A little bit off center, wasn't it? I mean, the guy really is quite kinky, that Klingsor, isn't he?
It's an out there characterization for sure.
Yeah,
It took a lot of work and skills that I never thought I'd need in life, like walking in high heels and doing a pole dance.
right, right, exactly right. But and all the more scary for that. That guy really seems to know what he wants, doesn't he? Klingsor in that production, he doesn't seem to doubt or hesitate or wonder whether he's doing the right thing. He just goes at it, doesn't he?
He is an impulsive, live in the moment sort of a guy in that characterization. Absolutely.
Yeah. I understand that there were some changes in the augmented reality images this year that weren't there last. Were there also changes that Jay Scheid put into the action of the production itself when he revisited it in the second act?
Yes, there were some small changes. There were some actions that were minimized or amplified, but the biggest substantive change was at the end of the act, in the confrontation with Parsifal. Instead of simply having a struggle that Parsifal, overcomes Klingsor and takes the spear away from him, he wanted to give a little bit more to the character and to set up some action in the third act. So he had Kundry intercede between me and Parsifal, and by accident, not intending to, I kill Kundry. And Parsifal immediately takes the spear out of the wound, and immediately he was able to heal Kundry with the magic of the spear, which both sets up the action with Amfortas in the third act, in Parsifal's healing of Amfortas, and it shows that the innocent fool is able to use the magic of the spear and the grail without any practice or training. He innately is able to do good acts, where Klingsor had been using it for exactly the opposite and not very effectively, showing that perhaps the magic is intended for good, and Klingsor is not able to exercise that magic properly because he's trying to use it for another purpose.
Right, right. I mean, that's kind of unique too, by right, isn't it? That you have a chance to continue to think about it and continue to work on it. In most houses, you open the show and that's the show, but here you get to revisit it, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, there are productions. There's a very famous production that I'm not going to name specifically, where at the dress rehearsal, the tenor singing Lohengrin hadn't quite remembered all the text yet. And he pulled out some cue cards at the dress rehearsal, Infernum Land.
No, no.
And that is now in the book of the acceptable what we did in the final rehearsals. So if a tenor should show up, I don't think they advertise this fact, they would be allowed to take their note cards out with them, whether they knew it or not, because it's in the book.
That's outrageous. What other than the chance to probe the character over a series of seasons, what other characteristics of Bayreuth distinguish it from other gigs?
Uh, the festival atmosphere is quite special for us as well as for the audience. It's not often that you're around colleagues that sing a similar repertoire to you. There's only one Klingsor in any given production. There's only one Alberich in any one ring cycle. So to be around colleagues that sing the same repertoire and to be able to talk with them about how they approach different things is quite valuable. So yeah, I know a lot of the singers. The world of Wagner is fairly small, so I know most of the people that were singing there. But there are some colleagues that I hadn't had the opportunity to work with because we sing such similar repertoire that I did get to go in and watch some rehearsals and observe Michael Foller's Dutchman, or to observe Olafur Sigurdsson's Alberich, which is an opportunity that I might not otherwise have had, being that we sing the same parts. So it's unlikely that we'd both be on the same projects.
That's never occurred to me. Of course, it's like a stew with all kinds of special things inside the stew, and everybody gets to know and learn from each other, huh?
Absolutely. It's like a convention of a sorts. Everybody in the business is there and you can talk and swap ideas and say, oh, don't sing it that way. That'll catch up with you by the end of the act. Sing it this way. It's much better.
Right, right. Yeah, that's really interesting. It's been a mystery to me that in the old, in the old Fox system of German theaters, you would have somebody who is a Bellini Donizetti singer, and then you'd have a different person who would be a heavy dramatic singer, and yet you do them both. Uh, oh, how can that be? Yeah.
Well, I think part of it is the function of the business of opera, where, as in many businesses, it's easier to compartmentalize and think of a singer as being a specialist in a certain repertoire. And there are lots of singers who are happy to do that, that sing a limited repertoire in a language that they are fluent, maybe even their native tongue, and they don't really venture into other languages or other styles. My journey as a singer, I started out as a high lyric baritone. I sang, for example, 11 productions as Figaro in the Barber of Seville when I was much younger. And so the path into the Italian repertoire was actually more natural. When I had to learn how to sing the German repertoire, it happened suddenly, and I had to learn the style and go to the experts and work with as many specialists as I could to put that tool set into my toolbox, because I never expected to sing this repertoire.
Are they distinctive? In other words, I mean, the very fact that you do it disproves, I guess, the suggestion that it can't be done. It's just that so many of us hear Donizetti as light, embellished, and hear Wagner as dark and
Mhm.
heavy and direct.
I think that good singing is good singing. I think that the mechanism of the voice is used very much the same way, no matter the repertoire. Musically, stylistically, linguistically, there are significant differences. You're absolutely right that you have to bring a lighter approach to a Donizetti Buffa opera than you would to Parsifal. But within that, the mechanism of the voice is working essentially the same way. And if you can bring the appropriate approach to the language, the appropriate approach to the composer's intention to that vocal technique, then it's quite flexible. I look at it like if you have a nice car, you have to shift gears every once in a while, or you're going to burn your transmission out. And I think of that at the different sorts of repertoire. I think it's both vocally and musically healthy to change your approach every once in a while. And my background in the Italian and Buffa repertoire has influenced the way that I approach some Wagner roles and phrases, and vice versa. When I go back and sing some of the bigger Italian repertoire now, I can say to myself, well, in this moment, some people are tempted to oversing when this part of the Scarpia torture scene comes through. But having sung similar roles in the Wagnerian rep, I understand that if you do it in a more lyrical way, ironically enough, taking lyricism from Wagner into the Italian repertoire, it's a easier, more healthy approach.
You also had the chance to sing some of the great 21st century scores of Dr. Atomic or Written on Skin or Dead Men Walking. Do you, are you forced, I guess, to find yet a third approach to vocal production in that kind of score that does not have a set approach or a tradition or a style?
I would say that, again, good singing is good singing. I approach the mechanism, the machine of singing, I approach the same way no matter what I'm singing. That being said, stylistically, every composer wants something different. There are some places where a composer would ask you to be very declamatory and text driven. And so I obviously respect that. My background was in composition. My degree was in musical composition, and I came to voice later through that, actually. And when I've had the opportunity to work with composers on projects, By and large, they want good singing. Sometimes they want a very specific effect for a color, a straight tone in a very specific place, although I usually fight against those. Or if you're doing something like Death in Venice by Britten, there's a lot of falsetto that's written into the role of the villains, the devils, I forget what they're called. But by and large, singing is singing. And within the variety of stylistic approaches, you try to keep the mechanism as consistent as possible.
You have also sung a role that many of us just find meltingly beautiful, which is Barak in Die Frauen Schatten, and we're looking forward to a production at the Met around Thanksgiving time. What's the heart of that? Barak, he is such a mensch. He's so kind, and he's just almost limitlessly beautiful and life affirming. Do you find that if I were to play the role, I'd cry all the time. I think
Absolutely. Barak is probably my favorite guy that I get to sing. I don't get to play a lot of sympathetic characters these days. And you hit the nail on the head. He is a good patient. I think patience is the essence of Barak. He has a frustrated wife and he lets her vent. He sees pain in other people's lives and he tries to help them. He is patient and loving and generous, and he's everything that we should all hope to be in life, I think.
Right. Yeah. He's given one opportunity in the beginning of the third act of the one thing that he would want to say, and he says,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the guilt that he feels at the end of the second act, when he actually comes to anger, the overwhelming guilt for having let himself sink to losing his temper, it overwhelms him. And that's his unbelievable anguish and guilt towards his wife. Don't fear me. I'm sorry I raised my hand to you. I didn't mean it. It was a moment of anger. Forgive me. Don't be afraid of me. And it's just, he's such a good man. I'm doing another production this season, and I'm really looking forward to it.
That's right. You're doing it where? In the Deutsche Oper?
Yeah, it's a new production at Deutsche Oper, so I'm very much looking forward to it.
Oh man, I'm getting my airplane ticket on that one. You're here at the Met to do Hoffman and to do Rigoletto.
That's right. I'll be covering the four villains in Hoffman and singing Monterone in the Rigoletto. So
you get to do the curse, huh?
Yeah. Monterone is a role I never thought I'd sing, and when it came, I felt there's a certain group of roles that I keep in my repertoire to have sort of a light month when I don't have too much to sing, that I think of as sort of the loud guy cameos, the Bonzo, Don Fernando in Fidelio. I don't mind doing them now and again just to take a break.
Well, sure. I think that you probably deserve it. When we go back to Bayreuth, will we see you again in Klingsor?
Yes, I'm going to be very busy next summer, actually. I'm going to be singing Klingsor as well as Kotner in the new Meistersinger, and I'll be taking over the Kurvenal in the Tristan production that was new this past summer.
Oh, what a wonderful role that is. Wow. That's exciting. You're don't make them overwork you, okay?
No, I took a long look at the schedule, and aside from the last week when I'm singing, I think 5 days in a row, it's not so much.
Yeah.
And 2 of the 3 roles aren't terribly long, so I'm excited to do it, and I'm honored that they trust me, to ask me for 3 roles in a season.
Absolutely. You have worked with with Runnels, with Telemann, with some of the great conductors. If you can answer this without getting yourself in trouble, what is it that you hope to get from a conductor? What is it that you look to that you hope a conductor will provide for you so that you do well as you can?
I'll give you 2 pieces of an answer. In a very practical sense, I like a pragmatic conductor who wants to solve problems and make the piece, the evening, the music as easy to perform as possible. someone who is clear in their intention, someone who gives an energy to the stage as opposed to forcing you to, break character and pay attention to what they're doing. I want someone who is going to help you with breaths and phrasing and, things like that. As a performer, that's always wonderful. On a slightly more esoteric artistic side, I want someone who can show me something new, even in a role that I've been doing for a long time. For example, in the Ring Cycle, I sing Alberish most often. I've done it for a decade now. And a great conductor can show you something new. The way that two leitmotifs are coming together to create a new idea or a new impetus into something that's coming. It's amazing. I'm doing my first Wotan cycle in a year. And so I'm getting back into my study in the Ring. And when someone can sit you down and say, well, listen, in this moment, you have the fate motif that Erda brings, and you have the spear motif, for example, in the first scene of the third act in Siegfried. And this is showing you that the fate of the world is tied into the contracts that are in Wotan's spear, that are inscribed in the runes on the shaft of Wotan's spear. And that's something that I, for as many productions and performances as I've been involved with, I'd never thought of.
Yeah.
They compound upon each other and become new things.
I've heard singers talk that way about stage directors too, that whether the production is successful or not is sort of secondary, but rather, is this director showing me something about this
Honestly,
I didn't know before?
Yeah. I think the two same points are valid for stage directors as well. I want someone who's practical, that's not going to put me into a situation that's difficult or dangerous, and helps us to present the piece in a way that's easy to do so that we can focus on the characters and in the interactions, and someone who can look at the text and say, as with Jay Scheib in the Parsifal and Bayreuth, this man is an outsider who feels wronged. He wanted to make the point, which is very of the moment appropriate, that he's in the queer world, he's other, he's not X or Y, he's somewhere in between. As in the great line from La Cage aux Folles, he's ladies and gentlemen and everyone in between. He is the everyone in between.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a wonderful insight, and you could take that between your teeth and run with it. Really, can't?
Absolutely, and the staging, it helped. And he feels wronged, and he feels that something that wasn't accepted in his own persona, whatever you want to describe it as, he was excluded because of that, and he feels that that's a wrong that needs to be righted.
Right.
And so his action against the Knights of the Grail are to try and get some equity, some justice, something that brings things back into balance. He doesn't see himself as a villain, and that, from a director, is very useful because it gives you a foundation that you can make an interesting character and really push the line as far as what you want to present is.
The only villain that I know who actually thinks he is a villain is Iago. I mean, Iago's the only character who actually says to the audience in the play, I am a villain, I'm a bad guy, and I hurt other people. Everybody else has a reason to do what they're doing. That makes sense.
I would argue that even Iago thinks himself wronged, and he's trying to balance the scales. It's not from a logical or decent place. He sees that what he sees himself as being fundamentally better on whatever level you want to count it at to Othello. And this person who is my lesser was promoted ahead of me. Therefore, he's trying to right the scales. He does despicable things to do that. But from his twisted, psychopathic point of view, it's justified.
Where are you going to do Wotan?
My first cycle will be, I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but I think I'm fine. It's going to be in Cologne. It's to inaugurate the reopening of the theater.
Oh, wow. What a fun life you lead. That really, between you got a lot of stuff coming up, don't you? A Kurvenal, a Wotan, a Barak.
As far as Wagner goes, the only role that's left for me after the Wotan cycle is completed will be Sachs, which I've been offered several times and have put off. I want that to be the last one because it's such a monumental project in and of itself. Yeah. And that's partially why I agreed to do the Kotner, so that I can be around the piece and get to know it intimately before I start to get into Zach's.
Yeah, if you ever get to know that score intimately, give me a call, will you? Because that really, that's a big hill to climb.
Yeah, it's a big piece of work.
Mhm.
But yeah, I keep pinching myself. I've sung over 100 roles now, and the breadth of what I've had a chance to try has been amazing. And the fact that I get to land in this big dramatic repertoire is just, I pinch myself every day.
Yeah,
It's just amazing.
I bet you do. Well, I pinch myself that you're such a mensch that you would take time off and talk to us, Jordan. I really appreciate it. And I wish you the absolute best during the Rigoletto run.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, you came all the way to Bayreuth. I just got on the computer.
Oh, I'm gonna come to Bayreuth again, and this time I'll bring a pastrami sandwich, and we can sit down.
Wonderful.
All right. I'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye bye.